So how far did we get? Did we finish the Council of Elrond?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then I'll just pick up there. So the next chapter is chapter 3, The Ring Goes South, which we're going to skip. We're going to pick up with the next chapter, and I'm just going to breeze through this one. Journey in the Dark. So before they go into Moria, in the mines of Moria, how do they try to go south first? Over the top of Mount Caradhras. Caradhras. And both Gandalf and Aragorn talk like the mountain has its own will, and it tries to stop them. Big old snowstorm, etc. So they take this other route. That notice, Aragorn is afraid to go on, page 297. Okay? Gandalf says, "Who will follow me if I lead you there?" Gimli, "I will," eagerly. Aragorn, "I will. You followed my lead almost to disaster in the snow and have said no word of blame." In other words, "No, I told you so," from Gandalf. "I will follow your lead now if this last warning does not move you. It's not of the ring nor of us others that I'm thinking now, but of you, Gandalf. And I say to you, if you pass the doors of Moria, beware." What's Tolkien doing? Foreshadowing. He's preparing us for what is to come. So they get to the doors, they find the doors, and page 305 in my edition, and you've got the nice drawing there. And it says, "Speak, friend, and enter." That's how Gandalf translates what it says. And he realizes after many minutes, I mistranslated. I should have said, "Say, friend, and enter." And he realizes that. He says, Malone, the doors open, and what happens to Frodo? At that very moment. Yeah. What they call the Watcher in the Lake. It's essentially a giant octopus, or squid. Grabs him with one of its tentacles and starts to pull him back. Okay? And they chop at the snake-like tentacle thingy and release Frodo. They all get inside the doors, and the Watcher in the Lake slams the doors closed. So now they're stuck. They're in, so there's only one way to go. Through Moria and come out the other side. Okay? So they go in, and they find Moria hasn't been completely abandoned for a long time. They find the remains. Well, I shouldn't use that word. They find the evidence that Balin's expedition did actually arrive at Moria many, many years ago and was successful in kind of restarting a dwarvish community there, let's say. But then they also find essentially Balin's journal. I told my other class, if you go to Marquette University and go to the library, go to the special collections, the Tolkien collection, you can actually see the book that they're reading from because Tolkien made it. He was that much of a nerd. I mean, he made all the maps that he talks about, he drew. So you can actually see them. In The Hobbit, the little map they have that has to be read under moon runes, Tolkien drew that. He created the whole thing. Well, he created what's called the Black Book of Mazapul, which is the book they're reading from. And it's got, if I remember correctly, it's even got little drips of blood on it where he poked himself with a pin, okay? Its pages are burned because he made it look like it was burned and stuff. And so they're reading that, and they get attacked. But something happens their first night there. They get in that big guard room, probably a room, 4 times the length of this one. And Pippin immediately notices a well. Okay, how old is Pippin? Let's use how old is Pippin in our years. What would he be like?
15.
Yeah, probably pretty good. Maybe even a little bit younger. Okay? And what does he do? Who wouldn't? I mean, come on. If I were a essentially 15-year-old and I found what I thought might be a really deep well, I want to find out how deep this thing is. So he picks up a rock and drops it. And you can imagine he's going 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. And it falls and 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 falls before they hear Slush. What does Gandalf say? Anybody know? Fool of a took. Next time throw yourself in. We're not here on a Hobbit, play journey. Okay? There's a couple of significant things about that scene. Okay? What happens as a result of Pippin dropping the stone? Drums, which signify what? Somebody woke up. It's not like he dropped it and it hit some kind of mechanical device that started going and then boom, boom, boom. Somebody has started beating drums, okay? So they know they're not alone. This isn't a good place to not be alone in. Right? What else? What happens as a result of the drums, and let's jump ahead a little bit, the Balrog showing up? Gandalf dies. Bridge of Khazad-dûm, all right? That all happens because Gandalf convinces Elrond to let Pippin go. To let him come. Because he says, okay, we can let Merry go. But the youngest one, no, he's too flighty. I want to send him back. All right? So, they hear the drums. That's when they then go and find the Chamber of Mazapul. They find the book. They're reading it. And they're thinking of the drums, and it mentions drums. They realize they're under attack. All right? What happens to Frodo in this attack? Yeah, he's pretty much gets skewered by a mountain troll spear. But it doesn't hurt him. Are hobbits just naturally thick-skinned? He's got the mithril coat on, but none of them know that. Until after they leave. Because Erebor like, what the? And then he shows it and he says, you do realize that's worth more than all of the Shire. I mean, that little piece of mithril he has on, worth more than the entire Shire. Okay? So, they start to go down the stairs, and Gandalf says, there's something here that's beyond all you guys. He closes the door, he puts a spell of power on it. Whatever's on the other side says something else and counters it, and the door starts to open. What does Gandalf realize at that point? This is not good. So he tells us, he speaks a word of command. I don't really know what that means, other than it uses a lot of his power. His battery's drained, so to speak. And the other thing tries to break it and can't. They make their way all the way down, and we get to pages 328 and 29. 327, Gandalf's talking about facing the thing at the top of the stair behind the door. He says, I don't know what it was. I've never felt such a challenge on 327. Counterspell was terrible. Had to speak a word of command. Too great a strain. The door and everything behind it has collapsed. So we don't have to worry about them again. They get down to the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, page 329. Okay? The orcs are saying the word fire. I was kind of curious about that. Legolas turns, very bottom of that page. He gives a cry of dismay and fear, but our narrator doesn't tell us what it is he's seeing or why he gives this cry. Two great trolls appear. They bear great slabs of stone, flung them down to serve as gangways over the fire, but it wasn't the trolls that had filled the elf with terror. The ranks of the orcs had opened. They crowded away as if they themselves were afraid. Something's coming up behind them. Man shape, great shadow, but a power and a terror seemed to be in it to go before it. Comes to the edge of the fire. The light faded as if a cloud had bent over it. So notice, whatever this thing is, it makes fire look dim. Then with a rush, it leaps across the fissure. The flames roared up, breathed about it. It has a streaming mane that bursts into flame. It's holding a sword and a whip. And we finally hear, top of 330, a Balrog. A Balrog is come. What is a Balrog? Demon. Okay, yeah, it's a pretty good example. In our terminology, what does it look like? What's a demon look like? Does it have horns and a tail and cloven hooves? No. It says it's human-like. Does it have wings?
Yes. So it's like falling angel or something.
If you look at a lot of the art based on Tolkien's works, a lot of illustrators have done various things for this. It often looks almost dragonish. That is, it's got a human head and body, but then it has these great big dragon wings. Doesn't have wings, the narrator says. The narrator just says, the darkness or something curls up around it like wings. Okay? The Balrog is actually the same kind of thing as Gandalf and Saruman. Okay? It is a Maya also. It's a fallen Maya, okay? So, like a demon, a Balrog, Gandalf goes, now I understand. What an evil fortune. I'm already pooped. So, Gandalf tells the others to go across the bridge. They do. He walks out to the middle, kind of leaning on his staff, and says, when the Balrog starts to come across, page 330, right in the middle of the page, Gandalf stood in the middle of the span, leaning on the staff in his left hand, but in his other hand Glamdring gleamed, cold and white. The sword he had gotten from the trolls back in the Hobbit. His enemy halted again, facing him, and the shadow about it, notice, reached out like two vast wings. It raised the whip, the thongs whine and crackle, fire comes from its nostrils, but Gandalf just stands there and says, you cannot pass. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you, flame of Adun. Go back to the shadow. You cannot pass. Okay? Wielder of the flame of Anor, that's the sword. Glamdring. Okay? Elrond in The Hobbit told Gandalf, this sword was made in Gondolin, one of the elf kingdoms that is talked about in the Silmarillion. But what does he mean when he says, I'm a servant of the secret fire? Who or what is the secret fire? That's what Eru Ilúvatar created the world out of. It's something that resides only with Eru. And so Gandalf is saying right here, I serve God. You can't come across. Okay? It steps slowly onto the bridge. Gandalf again says, you cannot pass. And Aragorn sees there's tiny little old frail Gandalf and this big giant monster thingy. He says he can't stand alone. Elendil! And he runs back to Gandalf, and at that moment, Gandalf slams his staff in the bridge so that it cracks. The Balrog falls, swings its whip, grabs Gandalf by the legs. Gandalf falls and cries as he's falling, fly, you fools. And you can get on the internet and you can read what some idiot says that means. I choose my terms intentionally because this idiot says that what Gandalf is saying is that they should contact, pull out their cell phones and call Gwaihir the Windlord, who should pick them up from Moria, where they come out from the cave, and fly from there straight to Mount Doom. That's what Gandalf means, this person says. What would that mean? You don't need to trouble with the earth. You don't need to trouble with having to get around Nazgul and all that. Gwaihir can get you there in a day. He flies pretty fast. Well, that's completely ludicrous. Yet a lot of people lend credence to it, but it's stupid. What does he mean? What is an old meaning of the word fly? Flee. Get the hell out of here. Right? So they do. They come out and they want to see what happened to Frodo. And he's like, no, I'm okay. Aragorn, no, let me check. Oh, okay, now I see. And they make their way to Lothlorien. They are met by a group of elves, and we find out from Haldir, 348 and following. You got one with you that can't come with his eye. We got to blindfold the dwarf there. Why? Elves and dwarves don't get along. It's like, NAACP and the KKK. They just don't mix. And that's pretty much what the antagonism is between elves and dwarves. Right? And notice even here, there is still antagonism between Gimli and Legolas. There's no dwarf tossing, by the way, in the text like there is in the film. So what happens? Is just Gimli blindfolded? No, they're all blindfolded. Okay? So they go to Lothlorien. They're welcomed up, pages 354 and 55, to Galadriel's treehouse. It's essentially what it is. The Old English word, or the word flet, that's used to describe that, is just the Old English word for floor. Okay? So they essentially go up to her tree platform. And they're met there. Celeborn and Galadriel look at them. And she welcomes them. She says to Celeborn says to Aragorn, page 355, "Welcome, Aragorn, son of Arathorn. It is 38 years of the world outside since you came to this land." It's been 38 years since he was last there. Boromir isn't even 38 years old, more than likely. Okay. He welcomes Legolas. He welcomes Gimli. Okay. So they keep talking, and Celeborn says, "But there's only 8. We heard 9 left Rivendell." Galadriel says, "No, they didn't change their council. Gandalf the Grey did not pass the borders of this land. Tell me where he is." So they tell Galadriel what happened to Gandalf. 356. Celeborn says, "If it were possible, one would say that at the last, Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly, going needlessly into the net of Moria." And Galadriel kind of chastises him. "He would be rash indeed that said that thing. Needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed and knew not his mind, he cannot report his full purpose. However it may be with the guide, the followers are blameless. Do not repent of your welcome to the dwarf. If our folk had been exiled long and far from Lothlorien, who of the Galadrim, even Celeborn the Wise, would pass nigh and would not wish to look upon their ancient home." She's essentially saying, can you really blame Gimli for wanting to go in Moria? I mean, the dwarves haven't lived there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So she talks about the spectacular sights that are in Moria. And she looks at Gimli. We're told that towards the bottom of 356. "And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes. And it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw their love and understanding. Wonder came to his face, and he says, Yet more fair is the living land of Lorien, and the Lady Galadriel is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth." Why does he say that? A couple of reasons at least.
She's beautiful.
She's beautiful. There's almost a little undercurrent that Gimli is a little bit smitten with Galadriel. Okay? But he says, "You are more beautiful than anything in the earth." Dwarves aren't supposed to say that. Gold, diamonds, jewels are supposed to be the things they value the most. And he's like, screw all that, man. Look at her. Okay? There's silence. And then Galadriel kind of looks at each one of them. Page 357. Only Legolas and Aragorn could stare back. And they leave. And they go off, and they're all together. And Boromir says, 358, "I do not feel too sure of this elvish lady and her purposes. That is, what she intends. Aragorn, speak no evil of the Lady Galadriel. You know not what you say. There is in her and in this land no evil, unless a man brings it hither himself. Nothing is evil in Lothlorien unless you bring it in. Hint, hint. Okay? So they stay there for a while. They get refreshed. And she offers, pages 362 and following, Frodo Tolkien the Mirror of Galadriel. She gives Sam an opportunity too and says, you would call this elf magic, because she overheard Sam say something about elf magic. Did you, page 362, did you not say that you wish to see elf magic? He says, I did. I'll have a peep, lady. So what is the Mirror of Galadriel? It's essentially a bird fountain, water in it, in the light from a star that is reflected or shining in it. Okay? Sam looks, he sees stars. Then the stars go out. He sees Frodo lying with a pale face. He sees Ted Sandyman cutting down trees. He sees the party tree cut down. He sees his father kicked out of his house and walking like a vagrant down the road. And Sam says, 363, I can't stay here. I must go home. But Galadriel tells him, you cannot go home. You did not wish to go home without your master before you looked in the mirror, and yet you knew that evil things might well be happening in the Shire. The mirror shows many things. Not all have yet come to pass. Some never do. The mirror is dangerous as a guide of deeds. Then why look in it? If it's just going to make you all confused, why look in the blasted thing? It's not like it says, Sam, do this. It's kind of like, one of those magic 8 balls. You never know what it's going to show up. And Sam says, no. I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all. What does he mean, or not at all? We'll die trying to achieve our quest. He says, but if I do get home, somebody's going to pay. So Frodo looks. What does Frodo see? He sees a figure coming slowly down the road, small and faint at first, growing clearer. It reminds him of Gandalf. Head's bowed so he can't see the face. Then the vision changes, top of 364. He sees Bilbo walking around his room in Rivendell. Bunch of swift scenes. He sees the ocean. And then the mirror goes completely black. And then he sees an eye. And the eye gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the bigger the eye gets, and as it starts to turn like this, and look, Frodo gets closer and closer and closer and closer to the water. Why? Because the ring's hanging around his neck, and it's pulling him to the eye. Galadriel tells him, don't touch the water, and she says, I know what you saw. I see it in my mind. Don't be afraid. She lifts up her arms, top of 365, and Frodo sees Arendelle, the evening star, most beloved of the elves, shone clear above. So bright was it that the figure of the elven lady cast a dim shadow on the ground. Its rays glanced upon a ring about her finger, and Frodo now realizes. And she says, yes, one of the three rings given to elven lords. It's not permitted to speak of it, and Elrond could not do so, but it cannot be hidden from the ring bearer and one who has seen the eye. Sauron suspects, but he doesn't know. Okay? So Frodo asks her, what do you want? She says, before he asks that, if you succeed, then our power is diminished, and Lothlorien will fade, and the tides of time will sweep it away. We must depart into the west. If the ring is destroyed, she says, we elves, we will gradually fade. And we will have to leave and go off into the west. We will leave Middle-earth. Frodo, what do you want me to do? Is that what you want? She says, what she wants is that what should be shall be. She says, but I wish the ring had never been wrought. Well, what kind of wish is that? I wish I drove a Maserati. I don't. Frodo, you are wise and fearless and fair Lady Galadriel. I will give you the one ring if you ask for it. It is too great a matter for me. In other words, you already have one ring. Why not get another one as a matching pair? Will you not take the ring? What is this? This is her temptation. This is her Garden of Gethsemane, so to speak. Okay? She says, instead of the Dark Lord, top of 366, you will set up a queen, and I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the sun in the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me. Period? No. All shall love me and despair. Why? They'll be forced to love me. She goes, no, not for me. I passed the test. She renounces power right there. Okay? So Frodo has one other question, he says. I'm permitted to wear the ring. Why can't I see all the others and know the thoughts of those that wear them? You haven't tried. Notice she does tell him, don't try to. Only thrice have you set the ring upon your finger since you knew what you possessed. How does she know that? Because she wears one of the elvish rings. She knows when somebody else puts on a ring of power. She knows who the other two holders of the elvish rings of power are. Okay? She says, before you could use that power, you would need to become far stronger to train your will to the domination of others. That is, you would need to want to control others. In the fairy story essay, Tolkien makes a distinction between what he calls magic and enchantment. Okay? Enchantment is this idea of shared joy, shared pleasure. It's like seeing something and telling your friend, you gotta look at this, this is amazing. Okay? It's, stuff people share on Facebook. They share that so that others can have the same joy or pleasure in it. Magic, Tolkien says, is the purposed domination of wills and things. You'll see when we get to the Harry Potter novels. Voldemort. 3 unforgivable curses. Every one of them is the domination of a will or a thing. It's the domination of life in Avada Kedavra. It's the domination of will in the Imperious Curse. Okay? And also things in the Imperious Curse. So she's saying, you must want to have power over others. Where in the book, this book, anywhere, do we see Gandalf seek power over others? Never. Saruman's going to say, I know what you want. You just want my staff. And then you get the staff of Radagast. He goes, Saruman, you don't understand. I don't seek power. Okay? So, they leave Lothlorien. But before they do, Galadriel gives them all, bottom of 374 and following, gives them all gifts, things to remember her by. Okay? What does she give Erebor? A sheath. Something to put his sword in, because the sword that is gone from that sheath will never break. It's a good sheath to have for the sword that was broken. Okay? At least that'll never happen again. What does she give Legolas? Bow. Okay. What does she give? No, let's not do Sam yet. What does she give Merry and Pippin? Anything special that is different from what the others get? Nope. They get cloaks. I think they get belts. And the little clasp, and they all get limbus bread. It's essentially, Cliff Bars from Middle Earth kind of a thing. Okay? Galadriel bars, I guess. What does Boromir get?
Alpaca.
Big, shiny, WWE, or WWF belt buckle. He's a man. He's a warrior. It's shiny. It's gold. Okay. Aragorn, we did. What does? Should only be one. What does Sam get? A box of seeds and dirt and rope. Sam's always wanting rope. Got a weird thing about rope. Okay. And Frodo? He gets a little glass bottle that has a thong through it that has in it the light of the mirror of Galadriel. Okay, so what does that mean? It has the light of the mirror of Galadriel. The mirror of Galadriel is a stone basin with water in it. It's not like she goes, boom, and it turns into light that you can bottle. So what light does it have? The light from the star Arendelle, okay, the evening star. What light is that? This is going to be important when we get to Two Towers. It's going to be really important. The light of Arendelle is the light of a Silmaril. Okay? Tolkien wrote a book that didn't get published till after his death. His son kind of put it all together based on notes, called The Silmarillion. It's about the Silmarils. It's about a bunch of other stuff too, but okay. The Silmaril that Arendelle took when he was placed up in the sky by the gods, okay, to be a light. The Silmaril was a stone, a gem, that Beren of the Tale of Beren and Luthien cut from the crown of Morgoth. Remember Morgoth was that Vala that I talked about, who was essentially Satan? Okay. Well, he had this crown and he put these stones in it. These stones were made by an elf, and they were the most valued thing in all of Middle-earth. Okay. Luthien's father told Beren, "You want to marry my daughter? Okay. You got to do two things. One, you have to cut a stone from Morgoth's crown and deliver it to me in your hand. Okay? You do that, you can marry her. So get the stone, deliver it to me." Beren says, "Boy, you value your daughter pretty cheap, don't you?" That's easy. Not really. In fact, he dies in the attempt. But his hand with the Silmaril in it is delivered to Thingol. And then they kind of bring Beren back from the dead, and he and Luthien go off and live happily ever after, and then they die and they leave the world forever. Okay? It's that same Silmaril that Arendelle later gets taken up into the heavens. It's that Silmaril whose light is now shining in that little bottle around Frodo's neck that Galadriel gives to him. This is going to be important for both the next two volumes. So that's what they all get. Plus, they all get cloaks, camo cloaks, essentially. You know, they look like whatever you stand up against, you just blend into the background. They all get limbus or way bread. And they all get these nice little silver mithril clasps to tighten their cloaks around them. Okay? We forgot one. What does Gimli get? 3 strands of her hair. I mean, this is Gimli. He likes axes. You would think he'd get a really nice broadaxe or a double-bladed. But no, he asks for, he says, if I may, 3 strands of your golden hair. Page 376. It is enough for me to have seen the lady of the Galadrim and to have heard her gentle words. So she says to all the elves, let none say again that dwarves are grasping and ingracious. But name it. I'm not going to let you go away without anything. Why not?
That's not her way.
Okay, it's not her way. One reason. What's another reason? Think, don't think high and mighty. Think low and base.
She kind of likes it.
Possibly. I think she's afraid that something may eventually, this may turn into, yeah, and she gave everybody else gifts. Who doesn't she give gifts to? The dwarf. The dwarf. Okay? He says nothing. Well, okay, unless, I'm even afraid to say it. Unless it is permitted to ask Nay to name a single strand of your hair, which surpasses the gold of the earth as the stars surpass the gems of the mine. I do not ask, but you told me to ask, but I don't ask for it. That's my desire. The elves stirred and murmured with astonishment. Celeborn gazed at the dwarf and wondered, like, who the hell do you think you are? You know what he could do? He could just go find her brush, pull a bunch out. It is said that the skill of the dwarves, Galadriel says, is in their hands rather than in their tongues. Not true of you, Gimli. I commanded him to speak, but what would you do with that? Treasure it. In memory of your words to me at our first meeting, and if ever I return to the smithy of my home, it would be set in imperishable crystal to be an heirloom of my house and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood. And she's like, oh, Gimli, no one's ever talked to me like that. And so she pulls out 3 hairs. He asked for 1. She gives him 3. Okay? So they leave. They make their way down the great river. Gollum is still following them. Okay? And they get to almost the falls of Rauros. The river's rushing on along like this. And then it opens up into a big, almost like a pond. There's a big statue here and a big statue here, and then there's land. I think it is over here. So you got land over here. And over here at the top, there's a seat. Carved stone seat. Okay? And then the river goes on and it goes over waterfalls. Way over here is Mordor, and over this way is Gondor. Okay? So they get past these 2 giant statues who are of whom? Elendil and Isildur. Okay? And they come to here and they beach their boats. Aragorn says, all right, Frodo, time to make a decision. Where are we going? Where is Aragorn supposed to go? What did he say in Rivendell? I'm going to go to, excuse me, not Aragorn, Boromir. Boromir's got to go to Gondor. Aragorn's not quite sure where he's going to go. He's not sure what Gandalf was going to do, and he wants to do what Gandalf was going to do. Where's Sam going to go? Wherever Frodo is, because he's just, like hanging onto his leg. So they get here, and Frodo says, give me an hour. Give me an hour to think about it. Aragorn says, okay, but don't go running off, dangerous area. They already know there are orcs around also. So Frodo goes off, and he walks up this hill. Walks through forest, gets to the top of the hill. And Boromir surprises him. What's Boromir want? Obviously. The ring. Okay? Frodo says, I know what I ought to do. It's just hard. Page 398 and 99. So Boromir says, give me the ring. In fact, you could give me the ring and we could say, I took it from you because I'm stronger than you. Because that's true. And if you don't give it to me, I will take it from you. Frodo runs from him, puts the ring on, and Boromir comes back to himself, top of 400. What have I said? What have I done? Frodo, come back. A madness took me, but it has passed. Come back. But there's no answer. Because Frodo has left Boromir around here, and he goes and he sits up in this big old stone chair. He's got the ring on. And we're told he seemed to be in a world of mist. This is page 400. In a world of mist in which there were only shadows, the ring was upon him. Then here and there the mist gave way, and he saw many visions, small and clear. What does he see? Okay, the narrator tells us he's sitting on the seat of seeing. He can see all the way up in the north. Hold on a second. Let me. he can see all the way up in the north to where Mirkwood and such are. Trying to find the right map. Okay, so Frodo's right around here. This is where the Falls of Rauros are. All right, he can see all the way up here, which is got another map that's a better one. So let me go back. He's right around here. He can see up into Mirkwood. He can see up beyond Rivendell. We're talking. There's not a legend on there. We're talking hundreds of miles. He sees orcs pouring out of their caves in the Misty Mountains, for example. He sees the land of the He sees the land of the Beornings on fire. He looks towards Mordor, and what does he see? He sees Mount Orodruin, Mount Doom, spewing fire. And then he looks northward of Mordor. Okay, Mordor's here. Mount Doom's like way back here. And he looks north. He sees Barad-dûr, the Tower of Sauron, and then he sees the Eye. And once he sees the Eye, it's like he's locked onto it. And the Eye starts doing this. Okay? Here's Frodo sitting here. The Eye is up here, and it starts doing this. Bing, 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 bing. What's it doing? It knows. It knows. Someone has the ring on. And it's kind of triangulating. It's getting closer and closer and closer to Frodo. And Frodo thinks, page 401, there was an eye in the dark tower that did not sleep. He knew that it had become aware of his gaze. A fierce, eager will was there. It leaped towards him, almost like a finger. He felt it searching for him. Very soon it would nail him down, know just exactly where he was. And on Claw it glanced. That is, there's another hill with another seat. I think it's like over here. And it hits it. And Frodo's thinking, oh, next one's going to be me. And he heard himself crying out when he jumps out of the seat. Never, never. Or was it, verily I come to you. Well, those aren't even close to being the same, right? Never, never, verily I come to you. How could he be unsure which of those is what he said? Okay, yes, because of the ring. Might Frodo actually be saying both? Might part of Frodo be saying, never, you'll never get this ring. You know, I have to pry it from my cold, dead fingers kind of a thing. And might the ring be causing him to say, verily I come to you. Then, as a flash from some other point of power, there came to his mind another thought. Notice, the thought comes from where? Outside. Take it off. Take it off. Fool! Take it off. Who is this?
Gandalf.
How do you know it's Gandalf? I think that's the dead giveaway. He's the only person who calls somebody else a fool in the entire novel. He calls Pippin fool of a took. He tells Bilbo, you will be a fool if you try to hold on to the ring. Okay? Take off the ring. And the two powers strive. For a moment, perfectly balanced between their piercing points, he writhed, tormented. Suddenly he was aware of himself again. Frodo, neither the voice nor the eye, free to choose, and he takes the ring off his finger. Okay? Why is it significant that the narrator says free to choose?
When you're under the power of the ring, you really don't have a choice.
Okay? So keep going with that.
Frodo hasn't had much of a choice the entire time.
How so?
Like, he doesn't really get like the ring is just thrust upon him because it's passed down from Bilbo, and Gandalf just comes and saying, no, like, you have to take the ring of Mordor. No one else can take it.
Does Gandalf do that? Does he actually tell Frodo, you have to take the ring to Mordor? No, he doesn't actually. He doesn't even say you have to take the ring to Rivendell. He tells Frodo, this is Sauron's ring. It needs to be destroyed. He doesn't say, Frodo, it's your job. He just says, you were meant to have the ring. Okay? In the film, he does say, you need to destroy the ring. He lays that charge on them. Notice, at the end of the Council of Elrond, when they decide, okay, so the ring's got to be destroyed, it's got to be taken to Mordor, there's silence. Why is there silence? Ain't me, I'm not going to do that. It's walking into death. And Frodo says, I will take the ring, though I do not know the way. Okay? Is the ring his? Nope. Aragorn already said, because Frodo said, then it's yours. He says, nope, it doesn't belong to either of us. Who is the Lord of the Rings? Sauron. Okay? It's Sauron. So, Frodo does have choice. But, where you're right is, at this point, what is happening to his ability to choose? It's being corrupted. Yeah. That freedom of choice is gradually dying. The closer and closer he gets to Mordor, the longer and longer he has the ring, what happens to Frodo's will? It becomes under control of the ring.
What if that was happening at the council as well?
Well, some of it was. Why do I say some of it was? But I'm going to suggest, but not with Frodo. With Boromir. What did Boromir say at the council? Let's take the ring and use it. March to victory. And they all say, Boromir, hello, you're not listening. What did Boromir say back there just a couple minutes ago? And I'm on him. Let's take the ring. All these wise guys don't necessarily know everything. Frodo's like, you heard what they said. Okay. Boromir's will is already tainted by the lust of the ring. What did Gandalf say? First thing he told Frodo about the ring once he knew what it was. A ring of power does what to any mortal who possesses it? Ultimately, it will possess him or her. Okay? That's what's happening. The ring is gradually coming to possess Frodo. We're going to see a scene next week. Frodo's going to be almost at Mount Doom. And a voice is going to speak, we're told, out of a ring of fire at his chest. And the voice is going to say to Gollum, if you ever touch me again, you will be cast into the fire. But the voice comes out of the ring. Well, the ring doesn't have vocal cords. You can't, blow through the ring and have it, make heart-like noises. It's a voice coming from Frodo, but it's the ring using Frodo's voice. Because Frodo doesn't have hardly any will at that point. When Frodo and the ring stop speaking, because they both speak in that instance, he goes the last few yards up to this, what are called Sammath now, up to the cracks of Doom. And it's when he gets there that he says, I will not do the thing I came to do. The ring is mine. And we're told at that spot, Frodo says that in his clear hobbit voice. That's because the ring's not now having to take control. It's because the ring is in control. It's like Frodo and the ring are now one. But the one is the ring. Frodo is pushed down beneath. All right? So, Frodo sees all this. He takes the ring off. And the narrator kind of says, meanwhile, back at the bottom of the mountain, and what's going on back at the bottom of the mountain? They're sitting there, chewing the fat, wondering, what's Frodo going to do? And they realize Frodo's been gone for a long time. And then they realize Boromir's not here. So Merry and Pippin go off to look for Frodo. Boromir comes back, tells Aragorn Frodo disappeared. He doesn't tell him why at that point. Sam goes running. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli go running. So what happens to the Fellowship at that point? We have Frodo, and then you can put Sam like this, because he's running after and chasing Frodo. You have Boromir. Who's he running after? Merry and Pippin. You've got Sam, you've got Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. They're just kind of going off because they know there's problem, especially when they hear Boromir's horn. Breaking of the Fellowship? Yeah. Oh, plus you have still, Gandalf is still dead. Unless he's the voice, but you don't know that at this point. Because this novel ends with Frodo and Sam doing what? Frodo coming back down to the shore. Sam running halfway up the mountain saying, hold on there, Sam. Use your brains now. You can't catch the others. What's Mr. Frodo going to do? Well, he's going to try and get away on his own. Why? Because he doesn't want anybody else to get into trouble or to get into danger. He's trying to protect us. Well, and he's going to leave without me? Well, that's not right. He runs back down to the boats. He sees a boat by itself moving off into the water, and he runs and takes a dive. Okay. Hobbits and water, they don't really mix well. So Frodo fishes Sam out. They get in their little boat. Sam pokes holes in all the other boats so nobody can follow them. And they go off on their own. Where are they going to? Mordor. Where are these guys going to go? They don't know yet because they don't know where Sam and Frodo is. So we finished that book. This is this is July of 1954. The Fellowship of the Ring comes out. Now you have to wait until October of the same year, okay, for the Two Towers. So you wait 4 months, 3 months, and you get the Two Towers. And you pick up with one, The Departure of Boromir. What does that sound like? He's leaving. I mean, what did he say? All along, I'm going to Minas Tirith. How could Tolkien have titled that chapter to foreshadow what we're going to be told? The death of Boromir. But he doesn't. Okay? In the Harry Potter novels, you're going to see book 7. Most of you have said you've read these, so I'm not going to give too much away. I'm not going to name anybody. Book 7, there's one chapter where Harry and these fake Harrys are leaving his home. People who are disguised to look like Harry. They leave their Harry's home, and at the end of that chapter, we see Hagrid get hit by a spell and fall from the sky. And the next chapter is The Fallen Warrior. Sounds like what? Hagrid's dead. Hagrid can't die. It'd be too heartbreaking for all the little kids reading the book. Well, we'll hold on to that. So we get to the departure of Boromir. And what happens? Aragorn hears Boromir's horn. Now when does Boromir blow his horn? When he's in great need or when he's getting ready to leave on a journey, is what he said at the end of the Council of Elrond. Okay? So, Aragorn runs to where the horn is blowing and he finds Boromir. He's leaning up against a tree, pulling arrows out of himself. Okay? And there's a bunch of dead orcs all around him. His horn is cloven in two. Page 414. Aragorn kneels beside him. Boromir opens his eyes, tries to speak. Look at what he does. I tried to take the ring from Frodo. He doesn't lie. He admits to his fault. I am sorry. I have paid. Now, I think this is an example of what Tolkien was talking about when he said, in the revising of The Lord of the Rings, it became more religious and philosophical. Okay? Tolkien is a deeply devout Catholic. From a deeply devout Catholic perspective, if you know anything about Catholic practice, what could this be analogous to?
Confession.
Confession and repentance. I mean, confession is part of the act of repentance. Okay? He admits what he did. He says, I'm sorry. He's contrite for it. And he also says, and I paid. I'm dying here. His glance strays to his fallen enemies, 20 at least. He says they've gone, the halflings, the orcs have taken them. I don't think they're dead. Orcs bound them. He closes his eyes, gets his strength, speaks again. Farewell, Aragorn. Go to Minas Tirith and save my people. I have failed. He means, I have failed my people. I have failed Minas Tirith. I cannot go back to protect it. Aragorn, no, you have conquered. Few have gained such a victory. Be at peace. Minas Tirith shall not fall. And Boromir smiles. Why does he smile? Does he smile because Aragorn gave him this false hope? Oh, don't worry about Minas Tirith. It will survive. Is that why he's smiling? I think it's because of what he says before then. Be at peace. What does he mean by that? If that's those religious and philosophical ideas coming in, what's he really saying? If we're talking about the sacrament of confession and repentance, exactly. That's absolution. That's Boromir, you're forgiven. Be at peace means die content. Okay? Die in peace. Boromir smiles. Aragorn asks, which way did they go? Kind of important. Maybe should ask that sooner. But Boromir can't answer now because he's already dead. Okay? And I think they do this really well in the film when Aragorn leans down and kisses Boromir on the brow. Why? That's kind of, mending all the rifts between them. So, they get ready to have Boromir's funeral. And what do? Everybody always thinks, oh, good Viking funeral. Put them in the boat. Send them out. It's not a Viking funeral. First of all, when Vikings had boat funerals, even though the popular mythology is they put them on boats, they sent them off into the sea, and they had a really good ace archer from, quarter of a mile away, launch an arrow like this, flaming, and land it in the boat, which by now is the size of a postage stamp. Okay, first of all, there aren't any archers that good. Okay? What's the second problem with that? How would we know that's how burials were done? Unless they were written about, when the Vikings did not leave behind many accounts like that. We do know they had boat burials where they would bring boats up onto dry land, put the person they're commemorating in the boat, and then pile dirt over it. Those kind of boat burials have been found in England and Sweden and Denmark. Right? So what do they do with Boromir? They put him in one of the boats. I'm assuming they patched the holes in the bottom. Tolkien never addresses that. So maybe Sam forgot one. And what do they lay on and around him? The weaponry of those he killed. Okay? They put his nice big belt buckle on him. They put the two halves of the cloven horn in his lap, push him off out to the ocean, and they each sing a song, right? Aragorn sings about the west wind. Legolas sings about the south wind. Aragorn sings about the north wind. And Gimli goes, gee, thanks, guys. You left me the east wind to think about, or to sing about. Well, what's in the east? Mordor. And Aragorn's no, we're not going to sing about that wind. He says, that is as it should be. Page 418. In Minas Tirith they endure the east wind, but they do not ask it for tidings. Now Boromir has taken his road, and we must make haste to choose our own. So, they follow Merry and Pippin. So we finished here. We opened the two towers, and we see Boromir dead. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli chasing Merry and Pippin. We don't know anything about Sam and Frodo. In fact, we have to read through the entire first half of the Two Towers, and we still don't know anything about Sam and Frodo. But we do find out in a few pages, Gandalf comes back from the dead. So that's a bonus. And what Tolkien does throughout is he weaves these threads together. Sam and Frodo, we don't touch. We get to the second half, and the second half of the Two Towers is all about Sam and Frodo. We don't learn anything about these guys. Okay? And actually, he's going to eventually break them up. So Merry will go one way, and Pippin will go another way, where Pippin goes off with Gandalf. So we get chapter 2, the Riders of Rohan. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli chase after the orcs who have captured Merry and Pippin, and they run 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 for days. All right? And let's see here, where do I put it pick up? Legolas, with his keen eyesight, can see smoke off in the distance. And then he sees riders. Page 430, Legolas says, 105. And 431, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli sit down in the grass and pull their cloaks over them. And they look like what? Rocks. They look like stone outcroppings. And these riders start to ride on past. And we're told, they get about halfway past, that is, over 50 get beyond. And Aragorn jumps up and says, "What news from the north, Riders of Rohan?" And they circle around him, and they all have their spears out. 432 and following. The head rider, the chief rider, who says, "Who are you and what are you doing in this land?" addresses Aragorn, and Aragorn says, "I am called Strider. I come out of the north. I'm hunting orcs." He gets off his horse and says, "At first I thought you were orcs, but no, you're not orcs. But your name isn't really Strider either. That's no name for a man that you give. And your clothing's kind of strange. Have you sprung out of the grass? How did you escape our sight? Are you elvish?" Aragorn: "No, well, one of us is an elf. But we have passed through Lothlorien, and the gifts and favor of the lady go with us." What does he mean, favor?
Blessing.
Blessing? Goodwill? I'm teaching a European Literature 1400 course, and we're doing the Odyssey right now. And repeatedly in the Odyssey, the goddess Athena favors Odysseus. And she will kind of touch him, and we're told he's marked with her brilliance, so that he still looks like Odysseus, but he looks like Odysseus supercharged, like he's glowing from within. That's kind of this idea. They are blessed, I guess is about as good a way of putting it. And the writer says, "Then there is a lady in the Golden Wood, as old tales tell." What does he mean by as old tales? What kind of tales?
Stories, fairy tales.
Fairy tales, old wives' tales, legends, myths. Few escape her nets, they say. These are strange days. But if you have her favor, then you are also net weavers and sorcerers, maybe. And he looks at Legolas and Gimli and says, "Why don't you guys speak?" So Gimli does. Gimli rose and planted his feet firmly apart. Okay? So he rose. How tall is Eomer, first of all. He's the tallest of the riders, we're told. I think he's probably, 6'4". Well built. Gimli stands up. How tall is he?
4 to 5.
He's 4 foot if he's pushing it, like this. So he stands up in front of the rider and says, "Give me your name, horse master, and I will give you mine and more besides." The rider says, "You're my land. You should declare your name first." But okay, we'll let that go. "I am named Eomer, son of Eoman, and I'm called the third Marshal of Riddermark." Then Eomer, son of Eoman, third Marshal of Riddermark. Notice, Gimli's being polite. He's calling him what he wants to be called by. "Let Gimli the dwarf Glowingson warn you against foolish words." Kind of steps on his toes a little bit there. You're being a fool with what you say. "You speak evil of that which is fair beyond the reach of your thought, and only little wit can excuse you." Okay? He's saying, your thought is not able to conceive of the beauty that Galadriel has. You can't even think of something as pretty as she. And the only excuse is you're dim-witted. Only little wit can excuse you. He's essentially saying, you're a dumb jock. Notice Eomer's eyes blazed. He's really not dim-witted. He understood that insult perfectly. And the men of Rowan murmur angrily, and they close in, advancing their spears. You got to imagine Aragorn's going over there going, "Gimli, ixnay on the aim name calling A, I would cut off your head, beard and all, Master Dwarf, if it stood but a little higher from the ground. In other words, if I could reach you." Midget. Legolas standing next to him. He stands not alone, bending his bow and fitting an arrow with hands that move quicker than sight. That is, before Legolas finishes speaking, he's got an arrow pointed at Eomer's heart. This is Legolas, the dirty, hairy elf. Make my day. Eomer raises his sword. He's, "Okay, I'll take that bet." Aragorn jumps between them. "We intend no evil to Rowan, nor to any of its folk, neither to man nor to horse. Will you not hear our tale before you strike?" He says, "I will, but you guys, you ought to show more manners." So Aragorn asks him a question. "Whom do you serve? Are you friend or foe of Sauron, the Dark Lord of Mordor?" What about in between? What about neutral? There is no neutrality. Aragorn is saying, are you friend or foe? There's nothing in between. "I serve only the Lord of the Mark, Theoden, King, son of Thingol. We do not serve the power of the Black Land far away, but nor are we at open war with him." If you're fleeing from him, get. Leave. In other words, we don't want a problem with Sauron. "There's trouble now on all our borders, and we are threatened, but we desire only to be free and to live as we have lived, keeping our own and serving no foreign lord, good or evil." That's Tolkien talking. That is Tolkien, as he calls himself, the anarchist. Not Antifa anarchist. The just leave me the hell alone. Let me have my little garden, my little plot of land, and leave me alone. That's what the writers of Rowan believe. Just let us live our lives the way we've always lived them. Let us go on and leave your big affairs. So he says, "But who are you? I've told you who I am. I've told you who I serve. Who are you? Whom do you serve? At whose command do you hunt orcs in our land?" Notice what the question obviously is asking and implies. Erebor must serve somebody, right? Men have lords. He's obviously not a lord. He's not dressed like one. Aragorn, "I serve no man." Now, that could be dangerous language. That could be like saying, "I'm an outlaw." Because outlaws don't have a society that they are part of. It's because they are outside the bounds of the law. See, to be an outlaw really doesn't just mean you break the law. In its old sense, in its original meaning, it means the law no longer protects you from the rest of society. To be an outlaw meant you could be killed, and whoever killed you would not be charged with manslaughter or homicide or murder, because the law no longer protected you because of what you did within the society against the law. Okay? So Aragorn says, I serve no man, but the servants of Sauron I pursue into whatever land they go. Think of that in terms of like the war on terror. That would be like, I don't know, a Marine colonel getting, quote unquote, arrested by some Pakistani soldier and saying, listen, Junior, I'm chasing Al Qaeda, and I don't care where they go. I don't care if they go in your land, or they go in Afghanistan, or they go in some other stand. I'm going to chase them and kill them wherever I find them. Okay? That's what Aragorn is saying. Borders don't mean anything to me. There are few among mortal men who know more of orcs, and I do not hunt them in this fashion, but out of choice. He says, they had two of my friends. That's why we're following them. He said, oh, by the way, I'm not weaponless. And what does he do? He throws back his cloak, and he whips out his sword, and we're told the bright blade of Enduril shone like a sudden flame as he whipped it out. And he cries, Elendil! I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and am called Elisar, the Elfstone, Dunadan, the heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Well, he asked for his name, right? He just got the whole thing. If Prince Charles were to tell you his name, he's got like 7. It's like Charles, Edward, Arthur, William, Harry, something else. And then you get Windsor at the very end, right? Or Wales, actually, because he's the Prince of Wales. So, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, am called Elisar, the Elfstone. Why the Elfstone? Nope. The Silmaril. Dunadan, Riders of the North, heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly. See, Éomer just thought this was Joe from the southern marches. And instead, who does he turn out to be? Put it in our world terms.
The king of Gondor.
Okay, but in our world terms. There's no Gondor in our world terms. It's not even Arthur. Because Arthur hasn't been gone nearly as long. If you're Jewish, this would be like, this is the Messiah. Back. After all these years. Okay? Gimli and Legolas look at Aragorn in amazement. Why? Because they've never seen him like this before. He's usually just dirty, old, smelly Aragorn. Okay? He seemed to have grown in stature while Éomer had shrunk. And in his living face, they caught a brief vision of the power and majesty of the kings of stone. And Legolas, it seemed to his eyes, a white flame flickered on the brows of Aragorn. That's the Elfstone. Éomer steps back, looks at all, and then looks at the ground. Why doesn't he look Aragorn in the face? Respect, awe. Right? In King Henry VIII's day, middle 1500s, if a commoner looked at the king, if the king came in the commoner's presence, and the commoner looked him in the eye, Henry would have you killed for that. Because he thought, such majesty. Okay? These are indeed strange days. Dreams and legends spring to life out of the grass. What did Boromir say when Aragorn throws the sword that was broken on the table? It's like shadows out of the past. Okay? Tell me, Lord, what brings you here? Notice that, by the way. Tell me, Lord, why are you here? He asked about the meanings of the words that Boromir was taking to Imladris. Aragorn says, here's what you could say to Theoden. He has the doom of choice. Open war lies before him with Sauron or against him. None may live now as they have lived. He says everybody has got to choose whom they're going to serve. Okay? So they keep talking about the orcs and their friends. And he goes, no, there wasn't anybody with them. Aragorn says, well, they're dressed like we are. And they look like children. Hobbits. Gimli calls them halflings. And one of the writers says, halflings. They are only a little people in old songs and children's tales out of the north. Do we walk in legends around the green earth in the daylight? And I think Erebor could just merely hold the sword and say, would you like to hold this for a minute? Legends? Okay. Aragorn, a man may do both. Why? How can you walk in legends and in the green earth under the daylight? For not we, but those who come after will make the legends of our time. In other words, the legends will be about what? Us. Depending on what we do. Exactly. Depending on what we do. You can already hear the beginnings of legends. For example, about what happened after Hurricane Harvey in Houston. The things people did to help rescue people they did not know. It's already kind of becoming legendary. We have in our own world a lot of urban legends, right? Which are not supposed to be true. Sometimes they are. What's Aragorn mean? Depending on how we live our lives, those who come after us may make stories of what we do. Like Tom Brokaw writing a book called The Greatest Generation. Who? About 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who merely, and I use that word intentionally, who merely answer the call of duty and go off to defend their country. The green earth, say you, that's a mighty matter of legend, though you tread it under the light of day. In other words, what kind of stories are there about just nature in and of itself? The writer, Lord, time's pressing. We've got other appointments to get to. Elmer tells him to shut up. Says, give me a while. So, Aragorn tells them, we were traveling with Boromir. Elmer says, I'd really like you to come to Edoras, Theoden's Hall. That's what I should do. In 4:37, Aragorn says, I'd like to come with you, but I can't desert my friends. While hope remains. Very bottom of the page. Elmer, hope does not remain. Your friends are dead, he says. You will not find your friends on the north borders. So Aragorn applies a little logic. Okay, well, they're not behind us because we would have found them. We know they were with the orcs. So maybe they could have escaped. 4:38, Elmer, I don't know. May have been slain, burned among the orcs. But you will say that cannot be. But that you will say cannot be, and I do not fear it. He says, they're dressed like we are. You rode right past us. Yeah, I forgot about that. Hard to be sure of anything, page 438, among so many marvels. The world is all grown strange. Elf and dwarf walk in company in our daily fields. I mean, you got to really understand how odd that is. Okay, this would be like David Duke and Jesse Jackson walking hand in hand down the street to buy ice cream together or something. They don't like each other. They're never going to respect each other. And yet here we have two arch enemies who get along well, supposed arch enemies. So he says, folks speak with the lady of the wood, yet live. The sword comes back to war that was broken in the long ages, ere the fathers of our fathers rode in the mark. That is, that sword you have, that's older than all the people of Rowan. That sword existed before there was a Rowan. How shall a man judge what to do at such times? How do I know how to behave when everything is turned upside down? Aragorn, as he has ever judged. What does he mean? Good and ill have not changed since yesteryear. Nor are they one thing, he says, among elves and men, elves and dwarves, and another among men. What is he talking about? He's talking about an idea that is actually rampant on university campuses. Aragorn is not a cultural relativist. He doesn't say, oh, dwarf culture, it's just as good as elf culture, which is just as good as human culture, or man culture, which is just as good as orc culture, which is just as good as the Sutherlings culture. All cultures are equally valid and equally worthy, and we just need to be tolerant of everybody. That's not what Aragorn means. Look at what he says again. They are not one thing among elves and dwarves and another among men. In other words, good and ill, or if you want, good and evil are what?
Absolute.
Exactly. They are absolute. In this semester, I'll be able to write really well with my left hand. They're absolutes. There is absolute good. There is absolute evil. And he says, you can tell the difference today, just as you could yesterday. And there's not something that's good among men that is evil among dwarves and elves. Or something that's good among elves and dwarves that is evil among men. If it's good, Aragorn / Tolkien is saying, it's good. It's inherently good. It's good everywhere. That's why I was saying, he's not a cultural relativist. He doesn't say, oh, well, if this culture wants to do that, but our culture doesn't like it, that's okay, because it's good for their culture. If you take that mentality, then Hitler was right with what he did. Or Pol Pot was right for what he did among the Cambodians. Or Stalin was right with what he did among the Russians. Why? It was good for his culture. It's what his culture needed. It is a man's part to discern them, to tell good from evil. Okay, what does he mean by it's a man's part? Does he mean this isn't a women's? No. He means it is an adult's part. It's an adult's duty to discern between good and evil. He's essentially telling Éomer, you've got to choose. What's he have to choose? Do you trust what I'm saying? Am I someone you can place your trust in? And I think he's doing this partly. There's a scene in the Old English poem Beowulf. I've never made this connection before, and it just jumped right out. Where the Coast Guard, when Beowulf and his men land on the coast of the Danes, the Coast Guard comes up and says, who the hell are you? No one has ever landed on this shore dressed like you guys are, outfitted for battle. Okay? And they tell him some things, and he says, but a warrior has to be able to discern between words and deeds. And I think you guys are the real deal. I think you guys can do what you say you're going to do. Rid us of the terror of Grendel. Therefore, I'm going to show you to my king's hall. He could be wrong. And if he's wrong, he's just spelled the death of his kingdom. Okay? Éomer says, yeah, you're right. I don't doubt you, nor do I doubt the deed, which I would like to do. But I'm not free to do as I wish. See, that's what's wrong when you have a lord over you. When you don't have any lord over you, you can do whatever you damn well please. But he can't. Because their law says what? Any strangers in the land, take them to Theoden. Aragorn says, page 438, I don't think the law was made for this kind of situation. Oh, and by the way, I'm not a stranger. I've been in Rowan many times. I knew your father. I've had talks with Theoden. I think Theoden would do exactly what I'm asking you to let me do. Okay? So, 439, he says, all right, I'm going to let you go, but you got to promise me this. When You're done trying to find your friends. You've got to show up at Meduseld. Meduseld, the name of the Golden Hall, is Old English. Medu means mead. Seld means hall, mead hall. Okay? The name Theoden means king in Old English. So he's king, because he's King Theoden. All right? So they go off, and they arrive at the site of the burning orc bodies at nighttime. So they go and they camp under the eaves of the fire, and they see an old man who they think is Saruman. Next chapter, chapter 3, the Uruk-hai. And what does Tolkien do? We now follow Merry and Pippin, but where do we pick up with them? Back when they were captured. So we go back in time to the beginning of the events of the Two Tower, and now we're going to follow them forward in time. Okay? So, how do Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli know that the hobbits are still alive? Other than what Boromir said. The brooch that Pippin, when he got away for a few seconds, dropped off the side of the track. All right? Then we pick up with chapter 4. Merry and Pippin con the orcs and get away, and they make their way into Fangorn. Page 463. They go up a little hill, and Merry says, the wind's changing. It's turned east again. It feels cool up here. Pippin, yes, I'm afraid that this is only a passing gleam, and it will all go gray again. What a pity. The shaggy old forest, looks so different in the sunlight. I almost felt I liked the place. That is, when you're not standing up on this promontory out of the forest, kind of looking down over the top of the forest, when you're actually in the forest, it's kind of dark and gloomy. But up here, the sun's shining. There's a breeze, and they hear a voice. Almost felt you liked the forest. That's good. Now, the character of Treebeard, his mannerisms, his voice and such, are based on Tolkien's close friend at the time of the writing of The Lord of the Rings, C.S. Lewis. Okay? You can hear recordings of Lewis reading a couple of his lectures and from some of his books. And it's exactly the description of Treebeard's voice. Okay? So they talk to Treebeard, and they ask him, because he wants to know what's going on in the world, what's going on with young Saruman, And Merry, page 466, says, did you know Gandalf? Yes, I do know him. Notice the change in tense. Merry asks past tense. Treebeard answers present tense. Do you know him? Pippin says, we did. He was a great friend. He was our guide. All right. And he says, but you speak about Master Gandalf as if he was in a story that came to an end. And they tell how he fell. So, they talk to him about Saruman and such. And on 473, Treebeard says that Saruman is plotting to become a great power. And he takes them off to his bed, to his house, his home. And he lets them drink Ent Draft. I don't know if that's Ent beer. It's got some kind of quality to it. Because by the end of this novel, they grow a foot. They go from 4 feet to 5 feet tall. All right? And he calls an Entmoot. What's the purpose of the Entmoot?
To determine what choice the Ents are going to make.
What choice do they have before them?
Do nothing or do something.
What's the something they can do? Against? Isengard. Why? Because Saruman lives on their borders. And what is he doing?
Chopping down trees.
Treebeard says he's chopping down my trees. What is an ent?
It's a walking tree.
It's a big old walking, talking tree. Okay? What else is it though? What do they call themselves? They're shepherds of the trees. So they're the protectors of the tree. Like a shepherd is the protector of the sheep against wolves and such. And moves them around from place to place. Okay? So they have to come to the decision whether they should go to war against Isengard or do what they've been doing. How well has that been working out for them? Not very. Okay? So they march on Isengard. In camp. Outside, page 487. We go to chapter 5, the White Rider. We're back with Erebor, Legolas, and Gimli. We're back where they were the night before. And they start to talk about, let's see here, the forest and such. In 491, Legolas says that Fangorn is very, very old. He says, I almost feel young again. Haven't felt like this since I journeyed with you children. And Gimli says, you comfort me. Where you go, I will go. That is, if you want to walk off into Fangorn, I'll go with you. Okay, that animosity that they had, for example, at the Council of Elrond, not like in the film, but there was some animosity. When Legolas says, we let Gollum go, Gollum says, you didn't let us go when we were captured by you. Okay? So they keep going on. They're following the tracks. And they see this old guy, page 493. And they start talking with him. Gimli's like, kill him. Like, let's kill him now, will you? And he jumps up, page 494. He jumps up on a ledge. And as he's moving, they notice his cloak moves, and he's shining white underneath. Why do they assume this is Saruman? Gimli, Saruman! Speak, tell us where you have hidden our friends. Well, Saruman was Saruman the White, but what was he the last time Gandalf saw him? Saruman, Technicolor. Saruman in the amazing Technicolor coat, But the old man was too quick for him, 494. He sprang to his feet, leaped to the top of a large rock. There he stood, grown suddenly tall, towering above them. His hood and his gray rags were flung away, his white garment shone. He lifted up his staff, and Gimli's axe leaped from his grasp and fell ringing on the ground. The sword of Aragorn stiffened his motionless hand, blazed with a sudden fire. Legolas shoots an arrow in the sky, which bursts into flame, and cries out, Mithrandir, Mithrandir, using the elvish name Gandalf is known by. And he goes, well met. Yeah, Gandalf, that was my name, wasn't it? Aragorn, beyond all hope, you return to us in our need. That is a eucatastrophe. It is a sudden and miraculous grace, never to be counted on to recur. You can't come back from the dead twice, I guess. Gandalf. Gimli goes, but you're white now. 495, right in the middle. Indeed, I am Saruman, one might almost say. Saruman as he should have been. I passed through fire and deep water since we parted. I've forgotten much that I knew, and I learned much that I had forgotten. Okay? So, they talk for a while, and they finally come around to Merry and Pippin. He said, don't worry, they're with the Ents. 499. Aragorn, Ents? Then there is truth in the old legends about the dwellers in the deep forest and the giant shepherds of the trees? Hello, Aragorn, you're essentially Arthur. What do you mean, you don't believe the stories? I thought they were only a memory of ancient days, if indeed they were ever more than a legend of ruin. And Legolas goes, legend? Of course not. Every elf in Wilderland has sung songs of the old Onodrim and their long sorrow. What is their long sorrow?
The lost of lives.
The loss of the wives, the Entwives. He says, man, if I were to meet one still walking in this world, then I would feel young again. So how old is Legolas? Because, I mean, he doesn't seem like he's very old, but he's apparently 1,000 years old too. So Gandalf explains, Treebeard is Fangorn. That is, Treebeard is kind of his common everyday ordinary name. Fangorn is his more official name. He has another name, but I can't pronounce it, and it's really, really long. Okay? So, let's see here. We can skip that. They ask Gandalf what happened to him. He tells them about his battle with the Balrog, how they fell through the chasm, landed in water, got out, climbed up the stair, popped out at the top of the mountain. His enemy burst into flame, and Gandalf says, middle of 502, I threw down my enemy, and he fell from the high place and broke the mountainside where he smote it in his ruin. Then darkness took me, and I strayed out of thought and time, and I wandered far in roads that I will not tell. What does that mean, to stray out of thought and time? Yeah, he died. You can't leave time unless you die. Okay? But he says, naked I was sent back for a brief time until my task is done. What does that imply? If he was sent, there was a what? Somebody's giving him orders. Okay? What's it mean he was sent back naked? Is this Gandalf's Playgirl spread? No. What is it? Well, let me rephrase that. Not that, but it could mean that he was sent back literally naked without any clothes. I do think that is one meaning. I think it also means without clothing, without a body, he was sent back. Okay, what is Gandalf after all? He's a Maya. He's a spirit. Okay? So where he went is probably the halls of Mandos in Valinor. He went off to the land of the gods. They, like your little electric car, plugged him into the charger and filled his energy level up, changed his clothing. Why is he Gandalf the White and no longer the Gray?
Because he's wiser.
Yeah, he's wiser. He says he went through fire, and another place he's going to say death. He's been purified. Which is purer, white or gray? White, okay. It's clean, it's clear, it's pure. It's not sullied at all. Which is why Saruman kept saying, the white page can be overwritten, the white cloth can be dyed, etc. All right? So, Gandalf says, oh, by the way, Galadriel sent word for you. When did he see Galadriel? He's just walking around and she's, flitting through the woods or something? No, when he goes back and he's lying there at the top of the mountain, Gwaihir the Windlord comes and rescues him. How does Gwaihir the Windlord know to be looking for him? After they talk with Galadriel in Lothlorien, she sends for him. Because she doesn't think Gandalf's dead. Or she thinks he'll come back. Okay? So, he tells Aragorn one thing, he tells Legolas another thing, but he doesn't say anything to Gimli. So, Aragorn, he says to look for the path of the dead, essentially. To Legolas, she warns about hearing the cry of the gull and the sound of the ocean. See, for elves, if they hear just the sound of the ocean, that awakens a desire in them to leave Middle-earth and go across the sea. A desire that cannot be filled anywhere than over in Valinor. Right? And Gimli's like, then she didn't send me any message. And he goes, oh, sorry, Gimli, forgot. Let's see, what was it? Oh, yeah, here it is. Bottom of 503. To Gimli, son of Glóin, give his lady's greeting. Lock-bearer, wherever thou goest, my thought goes with thee. But have a care to lay in thine axe to the right tree. Okay, so wherever you go, my thought goes with thee. Why? Well, what's he carrying? 3 strands of her head. The hair is connected to her head, which is connected to her thoughts. Okay? But what else does it mean? I'm thinking about you. Wherever you are, I'm thinking about you. How do we know that's the kind of meaning Gimli gets from it? In happy hour you have returned to us, cried the dwarf, capering, as he sang loudly in the strange dwarf tongue. What is capering? Like if you've ever been to a Highland Games, it's like Scottish or Irish dancing. He is dancing a jig. He is so happy. Short, fat, stout little dwarf. Okay? Because Galadriel's thinking of me. Okay, King of the Golden Hall. They go off to Erebor. And I gotta see if I left it open. And as they make their way there, they go by some burial mounds. Page 508. And Aragorn sings the song, and he says, this is what it is in the common speech. Where now the horse and the rider? Where is the horn that was blowing? Where is the helm and the hauberk and the bright hair flowing? Where is the hand on the harp string and the red fire glowing? Where is the spring and the harvest and the tall corn growing? This is all part of what's called, or what is called, the ubi sunt motif. It's Latin, and it means where are. Peter, Paul, and Mary made one of these in the 1960s called Where Have All the Flowers Gone? It was an anti-war, anti-Vietnam War song about the death of young people. Well, when Tolkien writes this, I think he has in his mind these lines from an Old English poem called The Wanderer. This is it in Old English. These lines of it. Where quam Mary? Where quam Mago? Where quam Adam Eva? Where quam Simla Yesetu? Where Sinden Celadremas? Where? Where is the horse? Where is the rider? Where is the treasure giver? Where is the hall of feasts? Where are, sorry, not the hall of feasts. Oh, what is that one? Where are the seats at the feast? And then where are the revels in the hall? Okay? And then I think it's the extended edition DVD. We hear Aragorn sing this in the language of the Rohirrim, and it's Old English. I mean, what he actually says in the film is in Old English. All right? So, they go on to Erebor, and they get there, and the door warden, a guy named Hama, tells them, you got to leave all your weapons. And Gandalf's like, I'm an old man, I need my stick. Nope, that too. A stick in the hand of a wizard, and Gandalf's like, impertinence, boy. I'm going to just sit here and tell Theoden to come out here. And Hama says, okay, you can take your stick in. Okay? But Anduril, think about this. Aragorn leaves Anduril outside. Okay? And Gimli's kind of like, well, if my axe can sit beside Anduril, then I guess it's safe. So they go inside, and we see this image. There's a throne sitting up on a couple of steps. Behind the stone, sitting on the throne, is an old man who's kind of bent over, probably wheezing. And behind him is a woman standing, clad all in white. And at his feet on the steps sat a wizened figure of a man. And there's silence. Gandalf speaks. And then the man sitting at Theoden's feet starts to speak. And he says a lot of stuff. Gandalf answers him. He speaks again. And I'm going to pick up on 5:14 when Gandalf's had enough. He's tired of listening to Grima Wormtongue. He stood up, leaned no longer on his staff, and he spoke in a clear, cold voice. The wise speak only of what they know, Grima, son of Galmad. A witless worm have you become, therefore be silent. Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth, I have not passed through fire and death, there it is, to bandy crooked words with a serving man till the lightning falls. He raises his staff, there's a peal of thunder, the whole hall goes dark. And Wormtongue's like, told you we should have made him leave the staff behind, you know. And Gandalf appeals directly to Theoden. Do you ask for help? And he points to a window. Now what kind of hall is this? Is this massive stone building like a medieval cathedral? No. It's made out of wood, and the roof is made of thatch. Okay? The floor is probably hard mud. And it would have in the center of it a big fire pit. And that smoke from that fire pit would just rise and go through a hole in the roof, because it's an Anglo-Saxon hall. Okay? Gandalf points to a window which is merely an opening in the roof, not glass. And a little bit of light comes in. And he says, not all is dark. Take courage. No counsel have I to give to those that despair, but I could give counsel. Will you hear them? That is, my counsel isn't for everybody, it's for you alone. And slowly Theoden gets up. And as he gets up, a faint light grew in the hall again. Is that because Gandalf points his staff at the dimmer switch and it starts to turn and the lights gradually come up? Is it because Gandalf holds his staff and light starts to throb from the crystal thing on the end of his stupid staff in the movie? Nope. It starts to get light because Theoden is getting up. The light is from the king coming to himself. Okay? The woman rushes to the king's side to help him. They go to the doors. Gandalf says, open the doors. He tells the guards, go down to the stairs. Leave me alone with them. The king says to Eowyn, go, Eowyn, sister daughter. Time for fears past. How old is Theoden?
60.
Late 40s or early 50s. He's not even as old as Aragorn. Aragorn probably, I think this is actually mentioned in the appendix, I think Aragorn knew Theoden's father. Theoden's son of Thingol. I'm pretty sure he knew Thingol. Okay? So the woman goes back into the house. And Gandalf says, okay, Lord, look at your land. Breathe the free air again. What air has he been breathing for a long time? The smoky air of the hall. Okay? Mud air. And so he looks. He's standing on that porch step, you know. He's standing here. There are steps that go down. And what he sees out here is kind of like the whole land of Rohan. And we get this description. From the porch upon the top of the high terrace, they could see beyond the stream the green fields of Rohan fading into distant gray. Curtains of wind-blown rain were slanting down. The sky above and to the west was still dark with thunder, and lightning far away flickered among the tops of hidden hills. But the wind had shifted to the north, and already the storm that had come out of the east, what's in the east? Mordor, was receding, rolling away southward to the sea. And suddenly, through a rent in the clouds behind them. So they're standing, they're here, they're standing here, the clouds open up, the sun shines down, and they see this ray of light. A shaft of sun stabbed down. The falling showers gleamed like silver, and far away the river glittered like a shimmering glass. And Theoden says, it's not so dark here. What's he been told for years? It's pretty dark. It's pretty bad. The world's a horrible place. I can protect you, Master. And we need to appeal to Saruman. Gandalf, no, it's not. Nor does age lie so heavily on your shoulders. Cast aside your pockets. He's standing there. He says, throw away your crutch. And he does, and what does he do? He stands up. I imagine his knees and hips pop, his ankles pop. He does this, his shoulders and elbows pop. And we're told that Theoden says, dark have been my dreams of late, but I feel as one new awakened. That's recovery and escape. But it's escape from the false reality that Wormtongue has planted in his mind. I would now that you had come before, Gandalf. What does he mean by would? Tolkien's using that W-O-U-L-D in its very old archaic meaning. Desired. Past tense of will, meaning to desire or to wish. I desire or wish that you had come before, Gandalf. Well, he did go before. When he got the horse Shadowfax, and Theoden said, get out of my kingdom, I don't want to see you anymore. Not long now shall stand the high hall which Brago son of Erebor built. Fire shall devour the high seat. What is to be done? Notice, I'm not so old, I'm not so weak, but we're all going to die soon. He's still full of what kind of mentality? Despair. Gandalf says there's a lot to be done. Okay? Now notice what just happened in the book and how they change it in the film. In the film, what must Gandalf do to Theoden? He points his staff at him. I don't think he actually knocks him over the head with it. He points his staff at him, and what does he pull out of Theoden? Saruman, who is possessing him. And it's just, you know, and you see Saruman's image writhe, and he's finally utterly idiotic. It's trivial and trite. Because what is Gandalf suggesting? Why does Theoden think he's old and frail and is about to die?
Because that's what he's been told.
Exactly. Because Wormtongue has been telling him for years, you're old and frail, you're about to die. I always use this example. Do this psychology experiment. Go kidnap 2 babies, okay? Brand new newborns. Take one, take the other. Take one, put him in a house with loving parents who tell that child every day from the day he's born till his 20th birthday, I love you, you can do anything, put your heart, put your mind to it, you will succeed. And the other one is told, I hate your rotten, sorry little guts, you will never amount to anything, you sorry little shit. What are those 2 children going to be like when they turn 20? The one on the right is probably going to be successful and will probably be able to do almost everything he puts his mind to. The other one probably won't make it to 20. Because the other one has been filled with what kinds of ideas? Complete, total, utter failure. Okay? You get that drum beat into you over and over and over, and what happens? You start to believe it. Okay? Theoden believed it. Hook, line, and sinker. So why didn't he succumb to it? There were counters to to Wormtongue. Eomer, Eowyn, whispering in his ear when she could. Okay? So, Gandalf says, you know, you'd feel a lot better if you held a sword in your hand. You're a warrior. You need to kill something. You know, hold that sword. And he does, and he swings it around. Okay? And they have their old Theoden back. So what do they do with Wormtongue? Slice him up? They give him a choice. Theoden says, you can prove your loyalty to me by serving me. Or you could run off to Saruman and show your true colors. What does he do? Sayonara. See you later. Okay. Gandalf says, 521, he was not always evil. Once I do not doubt he was the friend of Rowan, talking about Saruman. And even when his heart grew colder, he found you useful. He says, but now, for a long time, Wormtongue's task was easy. All that you did was swiftly known in Isengard, etc., etc. And ever Wormtongue's whispering was in your ears, poisoning your thought, chilling your heart, weakening your limbs, while others watched and could do nothing. For your will was in his keeping. Okay? So, Theoden rides forth. And we get chapter 7. Helm's Deep. Okay? This chapter is 16 pages out of the entire Two Towers. The battle itself, from the slinging of the first arrow, shooting of the first arrow, or swinging of the first sword, to the end, is 9 pages. In the film, it is easily a fourth to a third of the entire film. It's like 45 minutes. Why? Great battle scene. CGI galore. I mean, you could just snort up cocaine and create, tens of thousands of orcs, which I'm sure is probably exactly what the CGI guys did. Okay? But what does that suggest? I mean, when the film came out, I was invited to speak at a couple conferences. One was up in Pennsylvania and one was in Oxford. And both of them had panel discussions. That is, they had 3 or 4 scholars wrestling with the issue, does Tolkien glorify war? And the question arose because of the film. Because if you read the novels, it's pretty clear. Tolkien doesn't glorify war. Tolkien doesn't like war. Okay? He experienced it firsthand. So, we see the Battle of Helm's Deep, which I'm going to largely skip. And we do have the little contest between Legolas, between Legolas and Gimli. Because I'm trying to get us to the end of this, let's go on. So we get to the Battle of Helm's Deep. How is the battle won? Is it because Legolas and Gimli just kill orcs galore? Gimli swinging his double-bladed axe and Legolas just... Is it because of, I can't even remember, but it's a robotic elvish army that comes in? I mean, they literally look like they're robots the way they move. No. What eventually does it? It's the appearance of the White Rider in time with the forces of Erkenbrand, and what else? The Huorns, Huorns, which are what?
Almost asleep ants.
Louder?
Almost asleep ants.
Almost asleep ants. No, I don't think that's the Huorns, actually. Well, maybe in the sense that they're not as intellectually awake and aware as the Ents, but they're not like other trees that don't move. These suckers move. They move fast. And what do? They seemingly feed on orcs or anybody else who gets in their way. Because when they're starting to make their way from Helm's Deep to Isengard, they see the Huorns, and Legolas is like, ooh, I want to get else. Don't go there, Master Elf. Just leave those trees alone. Okay? So they make their way to Isengard, and they see page 556. 2 little figures sitting on the broken stone gates to Isengard. And one, with crossed legs and arms behind his head, leaned back against a broken rock and sent from his mouth long wisps and little rings of thin blue smoke. So Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli see Merry and Pippin smoking weed. Pipe weed, as they call it. Where did this pipeweed come from, we're told? It came from the Shire. So we get to chapter Flotsam and Jetsam. Theoden and Gandalf go off, and Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli sit and talk with Merry and Pippin about all their adventures and what happened. So we're going to skip a bunch of that. And they tell them about what happened once Treebeard and company arrived at Isengard. They beat the hell out of it. Knocked down all the walls. The only thing that's left standing is what? The Tower of Orthanc. Okay? Why didn't they break down the tower? They couldn't. They tried, but they couldn't. I don't remember. Was this on the quiz? Who built the tower? It does, actually. Men of Westernessa. Númenóreans. These are Aragorn's way back their ancestors. Okay? They built it in such a way that Ents can't even get, I don't think you call them fingers, tendrils in gaps between the stone to break them apart. So we get chapter 10, the voice of Saruman. Pretty important chapter. Gandalf tells the others, I'm going to have a talk with Saruman. Theoden's coming with me because it concerns him. Erebor needs to come too. Merry, Pippin, Legolas, and Sam go, well, we're coming. And let's see. So Gandalf goes up the stairs to the tower looks something like this. Okay. And it's got a stairway that wraps around it. And then right here, there's like a platform. And then up here, there's a doorway with kind of another platform and a little railing. So Gandalf and the others come up here. The riders all stay down at the bottom. And Gandalf tells Wormtongue, page 578, go and fetch Saruman. Do not waste our time. So we get this long paragraph that the window that Wormtongue was leaning out of closes. And then they hear a voice. Suddenly another voice spoke, low and melodious. Its very sound an enchantment. Those who listened unwarily to that voice could seldom report the words that they heard. And if they did, they wondered, for little power remained in them. Mostly, they remembered only that it was a delight to hear the voice speaking. All that it had said seemed wise and reasonable, and desire awoke in them by swift agreement to seem wise themselves. When others spoke, they seemed harsh and uncouth by contrast. And if they gainsaid the voice, anger was kindled in the hearts of those under the spell. For some, the spell lasted only while the voice spoke to them. And when it spoke to another, they smiled, as men do who see through a juggler's trick, while others gape at it. For many, the sound of the voice alone was enough to hold them enthralled. But for those whom it conquered, the spell endured when they were far away, and ever they heard that soft voice whispering and urging them. But none were unmoved. None rejected its pleas and its commands, without an effort of mind and will, so long as its master had control of it. Okay, the none has got to include whom? Gandalf, Aragorn. So they're even, that Saruman's voice even starts to work on them. It's only if they had the strength of effort and strength of mind and will to oppose the voice. So the voice says, well, why must you disturb my rest? Will you give me no peace at all by night or day? They look up, and what do they see? A figure standing at the rail looking down, an old man swathed in a great cloak. Can't really tell what color it was because it kind of changed. His face was long, high forehead, deep dark eyes. Gimli looks at him and says, like and yet unlike. Because he says, he tells Gandalf, I want to go because I want to see if he looks like you. What does Gandalf say? He would look like me if he wanted to, Gimli. But come now, two at least of you I know by name. Gandalf I know too well to have much hope that he seeks help or counsel here. But you, now listen to how he addresses Theoden. You, Theoden, Lord of the Mark of Rowan, are declared by your noble devices, and still more by the fair countenance of the house of Eorl. In other words, you guys all look like Chris Hemsworth. O worthy son of Thengel, the thrice renowned, why have you not come here before, and as a friend? Much have I desired to see you, the mightiest king of western lands. Now that's just a lie. Just an out-and-out lie. Well, take that back. It's not a lie. Why? Because he's really the only king of western lands. There is no king in Gondor. But Denethor is stronger and more powerful than Theoden. But he's not a king. Is it too late? Despite the injuries that have been done to me, in which the men of Rowan, alas, have had some part, still I would save you and deliver you from the ruin that draws nigh inevitably, if you ride upon this road which you have taken. I alone can aid you now. Now the riders of Rowan down below hear that, and they're like, yes, yes. Theoden opens his mouth, but doesn't say anything. He looks up at the face of Saruman, and then he looks at Gandalf. And he hesitates. Notice, Gandalf makes no sign. He doesn't look at Gandalf, and Gandalf goes, don't believe him. Why? Theoden has to choose. Theoden has to overcome this temptation on his own. But Gimli interrupts. It was Gimli the dwarf who broke in. The words of this wizard stand on their heads. In the language of Orthanc, help means ruin, and saving means saying, that is plain. We do not come here to beg. Now, I kind of wonder if Tolkien wrote this part, or revised it possibly, after the publication by George Orwell of 1984 in 1949. Because in 1984, you have the use of doublespeak. War is peace. Knowledge is ignorance. Freedom is slavery. Okay? What does Gimli said? Words stand on their heads. That is, they're made to mean the opposite. Saruman, peace! I do not speak to you yet, Gimli glowing son. How does he know who Gimli is? Did Wormtongue, take names down? He probably did, actually, because when they arrived at Edoras, the door warden had to say, my lord, X, Y, and Z are out here to see you. Far away is your home, and small concern of yours are the troubles of this land. But it was not by design of your own that you became embroiled in them, and so I will not blame such part as you have played. A valiant one, I doubt not. Notice the little sucking up there to even Gimli. But I pray you, allow me first to speak with the king of Rowan, my neighbor, and once my friend. And so he again addresses Theoden. He's going to do this 3 times. Okay? What have you to say, Theoden king? Will you have peace with me and all the aid that my knowledge, founded in long years, can bring? Shall we make our counsels together against evil days? Still Theoden doesn't speak. Eomer does, though. Lord, hear me. Now we feel the peril we were warned of. Have we ridden forth to victory only to stand at last, amazed by an old liar with honey on his forked tongue? So would the trapped wolf speak to the hounds, if he could. What is Eomer's ace in the hole? What's his trump card that he pulls out?
Kill the sun.
Remember Theodred at the fords. That's Theoden's son. And the grave of Hama in Helm's Deep. If we speak of poisoned tongues, what shall we say of yours, young serpent? Oops. Saruman just revealed his anger. See, he's been speaking in this nice, smooth, mellifluous voice. And the flash of his anger was now plain to see. But come, Eomer, Eamon's son. Speaking in his soft voice. Why? He's trying to lull everybody. To every man his parts. Valor in arms is yours. You win high honor thereby. Slay whom your lord names as enemies, and be content. Meddle not in policies which you do not understand. In other words, shut up, boy. You're just a weapon. Guns don't think, right? Somebody pulls a trigger, the gun doesn't go, I don't know if I should actually fire that bullet. I don't think that would be the right thing to do. It would be morally wrong. Nope. Pull the trigger, boom. But maybe if you become a king, you will find that he must choose his friends with care. That is, the king must choose his friends with care. Or presidents. The friendship of Saruman and the power of Orthanc cannot be lightly thrown aside, whatever grievances, real or fancied, may lie behind. You've won a battle, not a war. And that with help on which you cannot count again. What's he talking about there? You talking about the Ents, the Hjorns? Yes. Is he planting the seeds of doubt about Gandalf in their minds? Yes. What was Gandalf's nickname before he came back this time? Gandalf Stormcrow. Why? Because whenever he came, all he did was bring words of fear, words of problems in the world. He never came and brought good news. But my lord of Rohan, am I to be called a murderer because valiant men have fallen in battle? Notice the equivocation or the equivalence he just draws. He makes moral equivalence between people who die in war and what? Murder. Out and out murder. Theoden at the fords. That was murder. That wasn't warfare. Because who else died at the fords and why was Theoden there? Because Saruman's troops were slaughtering women and children. Theoden was there to defend them. Right? That's murder. He's saying, hey, all's fair in love and war. But it's not. The Geneva Conventions weren't created out of thin air. There have been, for thousands of years, quote-unquote, rules of war. What is acceptable and what is not. So he says, if I am a murderer on that account, then all the house of Eorl is stained with murder. Why? Because you fought many wars too. See what he's just done? My murder, no, it's not murder, it was part of war. You guys have fought in war too. Therefore, we are the same. Shall we have peace in friendship, you and I? It is ours to command. Finally, Theoden speaks. We will have peace. And some of the writers go, yes! Theoden, we will have peace. We will have peace. 3 times he says it. Why? Because Saruman appeals to him 3 times. He says, yes, we will have peace 3 times, once for each appeal. When? When you and all your works have perished. We will have peace when you are dead and rotting. And the works of your dark master to whom you would deliver us. You are a liar, Saruman, and a corrupter of men's hearts. You hold out your hand to me, and I perceive only a finger of the claw of Mordor, cruel and cold. Even if your war on me was just. And he brings up the idea, Theoden / Tolkien, brings up the idea of just war theory. Okay? St. Augustine, big church father of the Western Church primarily, wrote about just war. You know what one of the components of just war included? It is never just to attack women and children. It is never just to attack civilians. Never. Okay? That's exactly what he did. He says, but even if it was just, as it was not, for were you 10 times as wise, you would have no right to rule me and mine for your own profit as you desired. Even so, even if it was just, what will you say of your torches in Westfold and the children that lie dead there? Okay, come on, what's your answer? And they hewed Hama's body before the gates of the Hornburg. So, what's he saying? That in and of itself is not just. Why? What do you do to your enemy's body? I mean, even the ancient Greeks. This is described in the Iliad and the Odyssey, written somewhere around 800 BC, describing events in around 1200 BC. What do you do to your enemy's bodies? You bury them. You give them a burial. Notice, right as Rowan, do not give the orcs a burial. They torch them. Okay? But they bury their own dead. So why do you bury the bodies of your enemies? Because there's something about the body that is sacred. That even your enemy deserves a burial so that their spirit can be at rest. When you hang from a gibbet at your window for the sport of your own crows, I will have peace with you in Orthanc. So much for the house of Erebor. A lesser son of great sires am I, but I do not need to lick your fingers.
Did they not bury the bodies under the big mound at Helm's Deep?
No, I was talking about the other orcs in the outside Fangorn. No, the Hjorns took away the bodies of the dead orcs. Remember, the forest comes in,
Yeah.
it moves away, and they're all gone.
I remember there was something about a big mound. But they didn't-
Well, they piled them up. But I think that morning then when the Horns come in and then they leave, they're like, where'd all the bodies go? Gibbets and crows! Now he's just completely losing it. Dotard! Well, what did it say earlier? The noble devices and the fair countenance of the house of Eorl. Dotard, what is the house of Eorl but a thatched barn, true, where brigands drink in the reek, and their brats roll on the floor among the dogs. That is a pretty good description of an Anglo-Saxon hall. Okay, too long have they escaped the gibbet themselves. So he essentially says, go back to your huts. And he tries one last appeal. Who to? Gandalf. But you, Gandalf. For you at least, 581, I am grieved, feeling for your shame. What shame? The shame he is suggesting Gandalf should feel for hanging around with such riffraff. I mean, really? I mean, the guy lives in a mud hut, Gandalf. Come on. You're better than this. For you are proud, Gandalf, and not without reason, having a noble mind and eyes that look both deep and far. So Gandalf kind of says, what? Do you have something to say that you didn't say the last time we met? Well, what did he say the last time we met? You're going to stay up on the top of my tower until you relent. Or perhaps you have things to unsay. What does Gandalf mean?
I'll give you a chance to apologize.
Bingo. Are you ready to recant what you said before? Are you ready to take it back? Saruman, unsay? I tried to advise you for your own good, but you scarcely listened. He says we could do much. If we together we could heal the disorders of the world. Will you not come up? And he just pours on all the charm at that point. I mean, it's just dripping off that railing. And everybody within earshot thinks what? That's it. We're dead. Top of 582. It was inevitable that they should make alliance. Gandalf would ascend into the tower to discuss deep things beyond their comprehension in the high chambers of Orthanc. The door would be closed and they would be left outside, dismissed to wait allotted work or punishment. Even in the mind of Theoden, he will betray us. And Gandalf just laughs. I am beyond your comprehension. How so? Because he's now Gandalf the White? Partially. But you, Saruman, I understand now too well. So he says, will you not come down? Would it not be well to leave Orthanc for a while, to turn to new things? Will you not come down? And he says, why? I don't trust you, Gandalf. Bottom of that page. The treacherous are ever distrustful. You need not fear for your skin. I do not wish to kill you or hurt you, as you would know if you really understood me. Why? Does Gandalf wish to hurt or kill anyone? No. And I have the power to protect you. I am giving you a last chance. You can leave Orthanc free if you choose. He says, free? What are the conditions? Gandalf says, well, 1, the key. 2, your staff. He says, but I mean free. Free from bond of chain or command. To go where you will, even if you want to go to Mordor, if you desire. But you will submit the key and your staff. He doesn't like that option. So Saruman essentially says no and turns around and starts to go back inside. And Gandalf cries out, come back, Saruman. Then Saruman turns and walks back like he's being dragged. I did not give you leave to go, said Gandalf sternly. I have not finished. You have become a fool, Saruman, and yet pitiable. You might have turned away from following evil and have been of service, but you choose to stay in all the ends of your old plot. Fine, then stay. Behold, I am not Gandalf the Grey whom you betrayed. I am Gandalf the White, who has returned from death. That makes it pretty clear he died. Because a lot of critics go, oh, no, he didn't really die. He was just mostly dead. Miracle Max off in Valinor gave him a pill, brought him back. You have no color now, and I cast you from the order and from the council. From the order means you're no longer a wizard. It could also mean Gandalf has been given such power that he's saying, you no longer are the thing you were once created to be. Like, you're no longer a Maiar or a Maya. I don't know that that's the case, because when Saruman dies, he just turns to dust that blows off. Most people, when they die, they don't turn to dust, they just fall, and there's something there. Okay? So, the ball gets thrown down. Pippin runs off and picks it up. And 585, Pippin asks Gandalf, what if Sauron does not conquer? What will you do to him? That is, what will you, Gandalf, do to Saruman? Gandalf, nothing. I will do nothing to him. I do not wish for mastery. Remember mastery? That's magic, what Tolkien said. He said, what will become of him? I don't know. Okay? Next chapter, the Palantir. So Pippin picked up the Palantir. Gandalf takes it from him. And that night, they camp. And Pippin's fingers are itchy. Can't sleep. He knows where Gandalf's sleeping. He knows what Gandalf has tucked under his arm. And he gets a stone, and he goes and he replaces the Palantir with the stone. He goes off, he looks in the Palantir, and then he cries out. And we find out, when Gandalf looks deep into his eyes, page 593, he says, very bottom of the page, you have taken no harm. There is no lie in your eyes, as I feared, but he did not speak long with you. A fool, but an honest fool, Peregrine Took. Wiser ones might have done worse in such a past. But mark this. You have been saved, and all your friends too, mainly by good fortune, as it is called. You cannot count on it a second time. You catastrophe. See, it's important that this happens. Why? Not for the reasons Pippin intends. What does Sauron think as a result of his brief conversation with Pippin? Louder?
That he has the ring.
That he has the ring, that he's that hobbit. Okay? What else does he think? Pippin is under whose control?
Gandalf's.
No, what does Sauron think? No. Sauron thinks Saruman has Pippin, and for jollies, made him look in the Palantir. And so he essentially says, I'll send someone for you. Okay? So what does Gandalf have to do? He's got to get Pippin as far away from the Palantir as he can. Because he knows, having looked into it, he's going to want to look into it again. 594 at the bottom. Aragorn says, in response to Gandalf asking him, will you take the Orthanc stone and guard it? It's a dangerous charge. Aragorn says, not to me, it's not. There is one who may claim it by right, for this assuredly is the Palantir of Orthanc from the treasury of Elendil set here by the kings of Gondor. Now my hour draws near, I will take it. Notice that language, by the way. My hour draws near. Sounds like Jesus getting ready for the crucifixion. Gandalf says, receive it, Lord, but be wary. If I can give you counsel. Aragorn, when have I been hasty or unwary, who have waited and prepared for so many long years? Gandalf, never yet. Don't screw up now. All right? So Gandalf and Pippin get on Shadowfax, and they ride off to Minas Tirith. We finish book 3. We turn to book 4. We get chapter 1, the taming of Smeagol. And Tolkien takes us all the way back to Frodo and Sam, leaving and coming into the Emyn Muil. And we get the taming of Smeagol. Okay? It's raining. They're hungry. They're thirsty. They see Gollum coming down the rock. And they hear him, bottom of 613. I'm skipping some. And Gollum drops and Sam jumps him. Sam gets bit. Frodo pulls out Sting. Sam gets a rope on him. Bottom of 614, we hear Gollum say, don't hurt us, don't let them hurt us, precious. They won't hurt us, will they? Nice little hobbits. We didn't mean no harm, but they jumped on us like cats on poor mice, did, precious. And we're so lonely. Go home. We'll be nice to them, very nice, and they'll be nice to us. And he goes on, top of 615, calls them cruel little hobbits. And Sam says, no, if we're going to kill him, Frodo says, if we're going to kill him, we have to kill him outright. But we can't do that, not as things are. Poor wretch, he's done us no harm. Sam, rubbing the bite mark on his shoulder, says, oh, hasn't he? Throttle us in our sleep, that's his plan. Frodo, yeah, probably. But what he means to do is another matter. See, Frodo doesn't like the idea of a preventive war. I can't kill him because of what he's thinking to do, he says. And it seemed to Frodo, while he looked at Gollum, Gollum lay still but stopped whimpering. It seemed to Frodo then that he heard, quite plainly but far off, voices out of the past. And he goes back to that chapter, The Shadow of the Past. What a pity Bilbo did not stab the vile creature when he had a chance. Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy, not to strike without need. I do not feel any pity for Gollum. He deserves death. I dare say he does. Blah, blah, blah. Frodo, very well, but still I am afraid. And yet, as you see, I will not touch the creature, for now that I see him, I do pity him. Okay? Why does he pity him? What has Frodo experienced since that conversation with Gandalf?
The influence of the ring.
The influence of the ring. The power and the pull of the ring. He sees Gollum, and what does he see? That could be me. Okay? So, how do they tame Gollum? What promise does Frodo get Gollum to swear? Top of 618. We will swear to do what he wants. Yes, yes, says Gollum. It hurts us. Frodo, swear. Smeagol, says Gollum, clearly opening his eyes. Smeagol will swear on the precious. Frodo, on the precious? How dare you? Think! One ring to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. Would you commit your promise to that, Smeagol? It will hold you. Notice, it will hold you. But it is more treacherous than you are, Gollum. On the precious, on the precious. So Gollum swears, bottom of that page. He promises, yes, I promise, said Gollum. I will serve the master of the precious. Good master. Good to me, Gollum. Frodo says, take the rope off, Sam. You can tell Frodo's never had a course in negotiation. Because how does he mess this up? Who does Gollum promise to serve? The master of the ring. See, Frodo should have said, let's revise that a little bit. Let's, after the master, let's put a comma. And let's say Frodo Baggins of Bag Inn, Hobbiton, the Shire, Middle Earth, Arda, the universe. Okay, let's make clear who that master is. That way, Could Gollum ever do anything to take the ring from Frodo? No, he couldn't. But he just promises to protect the Master of the Precious. And he starts to think a while on. But if I was to become Master of the Precious, yes. Okay? So, they go on. We get the passage of the Marshes. These are the dead marshes. Okay? Page 625. I know we're all tired, but we've got 20 minutes and we're going to get as far as we can. 625. They're going through the dead marshes. Why are these called the dead marshes? Dead heads and bodies and lights in the pools. What are the heads and bodies and lights in the pools from? Which war or battle? The one that Elrond said he was at. Okay. The battle before the gates of Mordor. 625. They're making their way through, and Frodo asks Sam, towards the bottom of the page, how do we shape our course now, Smeagol? Sorry, he asked Gollum, not Sam. Must we cross these evil-smelling fens? He says, no need at all. Not if hobbits want to reach the dark mountains and go to see him very quick. He goes, we can go a different way. Okay. How do we shape our course? Just keep that in your mind, because Frodo's going to use some other language later on that talks about this idea of creating our own path. Okay? 628, they're talking about the marshes and the lights they see in the pools. And Frodo says, I've seen them too. In the pools, when the candles were lit, they lie in all the pools, pale faces deep under the dark water, grim faces and evil, and noble faces and sad, many faces proud and fair, and weeds in their silver hair. This is what happens when you die in Middle Earth. That's it. No heaven, no hell, just Gollum, yes, all dead, all rotten. Great battle long ago, and Gollum says, I once tried to eat one. Pull a head out, can't reach them. And Sam's like, ew. Okay, so they keep going on. And 632-33. They camp on a little hill. It's like this. And then down beneath it, there's kind of a valley. And they're kind of camping up here. And in the morning, Sam wakes up. And he sees Gollum and Frodo kind of close to each other. Gollum was by Frodo, bottom of 632, at the bottom of the pit. And Sam listens to this conversation. Smeagol promised. Yes, my precious, we promised. To save our precious, not to let him have it never. But it's going to, yes, near every step. What's the hobbit going to do with it? We wonder, yes, we wonder. I don't know, I can't tell. Master's got it. Smeagol promised to help the master. Yes, to help the master of the precious. But if we was master, then we could help ourselves, yes, and still keep promises. Notice, 2 personalities, 2 voices, 2 uses of pronouns. Smeagol says I. Gollum says we. Why? Who's the we?
The ring and Smeagol.
Gollum and the ring. Smeagol is just little inkling of the bit of Smeagol that still exists. But Smeagol said he would be very good, nice hobbit. He took cruel rope off Smeagol's leg. He's speaking nicely. Very good, my precious, let's be good. Good as fish, sweet one, but to ourselves. Not her, the nice hobbit, no. And he goes on and says, but she might help. No, not that way, yes. We don't know who the she is. We get to chapter 3, the black gate is closed. They get there. Frodo sees the gates closed. He's like, well, Gollum, why did you lead us here? He said, you told me to. Well, is there another way? Yes. Well, why did you tell me? Because you didn't ask me to. I mean, pretty good logic there. So, 643, Gollum tells them about this other path. And Frodo has to decide whether or not he should go that way. He asks Gollum, is the way guarded? And Gollum finally says, yes, perhaps. Bottom of 643. No safe places in this country, but there's no other way. In 644, the long middle paragraph, the narrator tells us where it is Gollum is thinking of taking them. And that if Aragorn knew, or Gandalf knew, they would both say, don't go that way. Okay? And the paragraph ends, this was an evil choice. Which way should he choose? And if both led to terror and death, what good lay in choice? Notice the thought that has crept into Frodo's mind. If either way lead me to death, what does it matter which way I choose? Is Frodo thinking he's going to be successful in this journey? No. Chapter 4 of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit. They make their way south into the area that is called Ithilien and make camp. Frodo goes to sleep, and what is Sam thinking? Frodo's getting pretty thin. He's not the fat, happy little hobbit he once was. And he says, I can make him a stew. So he has Gollum go catch a brace of conies, that's 2 rabbits, and he does. And Sam makes a fire. Where is he at exactly? He's almost on the border of Mordor, and he makes a fire. Okay? Men see the smoke from the fire, and they get captured. Page 657. We won't be here too much longer. Yeah, hold on. Yeah. The tall man tells them his name. Lost my place. Frodo sees the tall man, and he says, I am Faramir, captain of Gondor. But there are no travelers in this land, because they asked Frodo, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh, we're just traveling. Just, sightseeing next to Satan's home when the apocalypse is about to occur. I am Faramir, captain of Gondor. There are no travelers in this land, only the servants of the Dark Tower or of the White. Frodo, we are neither. Travelers we are. Well, then declare yourselves and your errand. Where's the third one? The skulking fellow? I don't know where he is. So, Frodo asks Faramir, do you know the riddling words that Boromir brought to Rivendell? Because he says, 7 companions we had, one was lost at Moria, the others were left at Parth Galen. Who does he say was among those 7? Boromir. See, when Faramir left, Boromir was what? Still sucking air. Fine. Boromir. So Faramir says, yeah, I know about those words. Aragorn, Frodo says, Aragorn, whom I named, is the bearer of the sword that was broken, and we are the halflings that the rhyme spoke of. Now, do you think Faramir understands what that means? Aragorn is the bearer of the sword that was broken? Well, if Faramir knows that the sword that was broken belonged to Elendil, and that Erebor now owns it, that must be he somehow is tied to Elendil. Which would mean he, Faramir, since his older brother is dead, will be out of a job. Faramir, we must learn more of this, but not right now. Okay? So they keep going on, and we see the battle. We see Oliphants, elephants and such. And page 661. Sam, who wants to see more of the battle, goes up and joins the guards. And we see at the very bottom of 660, suddenly, straight over the rim of their sheltering bank, a man fell, crashing through the slender trees, nearly on top of them. He came to rest in the fern a few feet away, face downward, green arrow feathers sticking from his neck below a golden collar. His scarlet robes were tattered, his corselet of overlapping brazen plates was rent and hewn, his black plaits of hair braided with gold were drenched with blood. His brown hand still clutched the hilt of a broken sword. It was Sam's first view of a battle of men against men, and he did not like it much. He was glad that he could not see the dead face. He wondered what the man's name was and where he came from. What is Sam doing right here? He sees this guy who, not 2 minutes before, was what? Okay, alive and the enemy, or an enemy. What Frodo would call just an enemy earlier in the novel. He deserves death. Okay. Sam's wondering what his name is, however. He's not enemizing him, he's humanizing him. He's removing him from just being from the class of enemy to something else and where he came from. And if he was really evil of heart, or what lies or threats had led him on the long march from his home, and if he would not really rather have stayed there in peace, all that in an instant goes through Sam's mind. What's Sam suddenly confronted with? First time he's seen it. 1, death. And 2, maybe not all our enemies really want to be our enemies. Right? We'll pick up next week with the window on the west. Okay, we will probably spend half hour to 45 minutes with the rest of this. And then we'll jump into, actually we may spend a little longer than that. 2 towers does not take as long. We do that in 1 day easily. Because a lot of this is all appendix. Quiz next week will be over 2 towers.